while the dew is still on the roses. The voice I hear falling on my ear, the sound of God discloses. God speaks, and the sound of that voice is so sweet that the birds hush their singing, and the melody that God gives to me within my heart is free. As God walks with me and talks with me, God tells me I am His own, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, none other has ever known. God speaks, and the sound of that voice is so sweet that the birds hush their singing, and the melody that God gave to me within my heart is ringing. As God walks with me, as God talks with me, God tells me that I am her own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
I'm so happy to be here to speak with you today, but in all honesty, I would also be happy to just sit there for another 20 minutes and hear more of Leah. What a wonderful, wonderful beginning. So 4 beginnings for the start of this morning's message. How about just number 1, there is no evil.
I know.
And number 2, there's no lack of life, substance, or intelligence anywhere. And pain, sickness, poverty, old age, and death cannot master me, for they are not real. There is nothing in all the universe for me to fear, for greater is He that is within me than he that is in the world. And it really can't hurt, can it, to start off with the teachings of Emily Cady, who is for many of us a favorite of the early Unity teachers. And Cheryl, did I tell you that I was drawing from Emily Cady this morning? No, you just happened to draw from Emily Cady this morning as well. Not that big a coincidence. She's pretty important. So those messages that I started off with were her 4 comprehensive denials that she teaches in her Lessons in Truth, which is considered the second textbook for Unity, second to the Bible. And there's a big stack of them on the book table, as there should be. So if you can't put your hands on yours, you can always get another one. It's really not a problem having multiple copies around the house, because sometimes you have to give one away to somebody. So these denials in Emily Cady's teachings. These denials are all about letting go of error thinking. And error thinking is a sneaky little thief. We don't really know it's there, we don't know it's around, we don't know it's within us, but it is snuck into our consciousness and having a big impact on our entire lives. And we're often not aware of the impact. We're often not aware of the error thoughts. Simply put, error thought is anything that is not of truth, of spiritual truth. And we need to attend to recognizing it, naming it, grabbing it, and throwing it away. That is the process of denial, and that is a fundamental teaching of unity, and it's a fundamental unity tool. We need to be deliberate and clear because we have such a subconscious tendency to hold on to our error thoughts because we've come to feel at home with them. It seems scary to imagine life without them. We actually get hooked on the familiarity of worry, the familiarity of doubt. That is the only payoff, that familiarity. We can count on it. We can count on that worry. We can count on that doubt. But in fact, they then leave us cold. They leave us hungry and wanting more. So we have to let it go. Letting go of error thinking is like letting go of excess stuff. Whatever doesn't serve us or support our mission, it's weighing us down. So we need to release it. This is an abundant universe. But we don't have to welcome every single thing into our midst. There's so much we can let go of. We don't have to get rid of everything. Some ideas are true and wonderful. And some of our stuff is precious and fun. But with our stuff and with our ideas, we deserve to be selective. We deserve to ask ourselves what is truly precious. So many years ago, I had a good friend named Bill, who at any moment could rattle off his top 10 list of what he would keep if he could only keep 10 things. And this was a guy who had spent a lot of years kind of like survival, living in wilderness, and a lot of ground combat time in Vietnam, and just had lived this kind of life where he was used to not necessarily assuming all the creature comforts in life. He was enjoying them in his day-to-day life, but he had a real sense that it could go in a minute. So he always knew his top 10 list. And it wasn't philosophical stuff, you know, like he couldn't say, I will take peace of mind with me. You know, it was tangible, visible stuff. But it included me, you know, so it wasn't just stuff, you know, it wasn't materialistic or objectifying. It was his wonderful dog, Ewo, his old Martin guitar, his old tin cup from the Marine Corps. And as I said, for many years, me. It was his way of always keeping in touch with, what do I want to see around me? What creates the atmosphere I want to inhabit? And I don't know what prompted him, but I said something about the kind of life he had lived, and so I guess that's why he always felt it was important to know what was precious to him. And I look around the space that I inhabit, and I do like it. I do like a lot of my stuff. And I admit I've never come down to my, like, what is my top 10 list, but I do try to regularly look at what is precious for me here. Okay, so related to this, I recently, just by luck, came upon the last 20-30 minutes or so of one of my favorite movies. And that movie is The Jerk with Steve Martin. Have you seen it? Have you not seen it?
Never.
Okay. Well, all right. So, in the movie, Steve Martin plays Nathan Johnson, who has come into a quick fortune. And he is married to the beautiful Marie, played by Bernadette Peters. Well, at this point in the movie, he has just lost his fortune. I'm sorry, if you go see the movie, I haven't ruined it for you that way. And Marie has now told him that she's fed up and she wants out of the marriage. And he is devastated, but he's being defiant. And they're in their house, you know, their massive house, and he gets up and he's being crazy Steve Martin, and he gets up and he says, That's fine. I'm leaving. I don't need any of this. I don't need any of this. But as he's walking out of the room, he's like, well, except for this. And I need this. And this. And so he clearly has never made out his top 10 list, right? He's picking up every shiny thing that catches his eye. And by the time he's heading out the door, he's got a chair and an ashtray and a paddleball, and, so he's heading out. But then he sees somebody, a woman who looks to be down on her luck, who's got the one thing that he really wants, and so he trades it all to have a thermos, which isn't a thing of big value, right? But sentimental value, referencing earlier in the movie, kind of like my friend Bill with his tin cup. This is something that is precious to him. So I started thinking about Bill and his top 10 list a few months ago when we were hearing about the people who were leaving their homes in California in a hurry because of those massive fires. And some of them had the luxury of a few minutes to grab something, but really just a few minutes. And some of them, of course, didn't even have a few minutes to get out. I heard one woman, though, talking, being interviewed and saying that she just, grabbed what was on her way to the door. And she grabbed a bike rack, but she didn't have a bike. It's pretty hard, and she didn't have it. Even if she had had her top 10 list engraved on the wall, she didn't have a chance to go back and get what was most precious to her. But it got me thinking about what is precious. And this is before Marie Kondo, because it was after I'd been thinking about all this and putting together these remarks that I saw that Netflix show. I haven't even seen the show yet, but this big hit show now of Marie Kondo, who's about tidying up. And she's helping people know how to get rid of things that have mattered in the past, maybe, but not so much anymore. But anyway, it's a big new wave, and apparently the consignment stores and thrift stores are just overwhelmed with stuff because people are getting rid of their stuff, which I think is a good idea. Now, something else I want to add in here, and I'm not sure exactly how it relates, but it does. I know it does. The song that I had to learn, or I got to learn for a concert back in December, called Throw It Away, and it's by the wonderful Abby Lincoln. And part of it says, throw it away, live your life, give your love each and every day, and keep your hand wide open, let the sun shine through, 'cause you can never lose a thing if it belongs to you. And so when we're not keeping our hands wide open, then I'm afraid that what we're doing is we're clutching something. And if we're clutching something, it's probably because we're feeling insecure. And isn't that fear of lack? Isn't that error thinking? And that got me wondering, of course, and I hope it gets you wondering too. What are we clutching onto? Now, every Saturday, it is my privilege to lead a very informal, Unity-esque Bible study at Grand Oaks Assisted Living. I try to offer perhaps a new interpretation on the scriptures that we're reading without blowing anybody's minds too much. So recently, we read the bit of scripture, the story where Jesus is telling us that it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. And there are many angles from which we can approach this story. One thing that we really don't want to overlook is that it's a very weird analogy because camels don't go through needles. And so then we still want to get some value out of it. And scholars of the language, of Aramaic language, have told us, well, actually there may be something lost in translation here. Because the word for the eye of the needle is very similar to the name of a particularly narrow passageway, a gateway in Old Jerusalem. So now picture the analogy. a camel trying to get through a particularly narrow gateway in Old Jerusalem. Now it makes a little sense. So imagine that that camel can just barely get through there, but not if it's carrying a bunch of baggage. If it's carrying a bunch of baggage, it needs to let it go. It needs to take it off. It needs to throw it away. And then it can fit. And that's what it means to have that, like a high standard, a requirement in order to make it through. So Jesus is saying it's challenging for a rich person to get into heaven. Why? Well, what is Jesus saying when he's talking about getting into heaven? Jesus is never saying there's this other place somewhere where later you can go. Jesus is always saying, right now, currently, in the present moment, in the current space where you are, God is here present now within you and all around you. And in order to be in heaven, that means to have that consciousness of divinity. And in order to have that consciousness of divinity, you can't be prioritizing material gain. So if our focus is on material pursuits, that means our focus is not on spiritual pursuits and spiritual truth. And we need to let that go in order to get into heaven, in order to get into that state of consciousness. So just more in favor of getting rid of some stuff. The problem isn't having a lot of money. The problem, if somebody's hard work and good fortune and circumstances have led them to have a lot of material resources, that is not a problem. The problem is if they are prioritizing that, if that's where they're keeping their consciousness, because you can't be in both, right? So you've got to keep that consciousness, keep that focus on God. So once again, when we are holding on to a lot of stuff, which I think most of us do, we are seeking comfort and fulfillment in the material world. When we let go of our stuff, we are affirming that we live in an abundant and generous universe that does provide for us. There's another scriptural passage. It's not a similar story, literally, but it's a similar story in interpretation, and that is when Jesus says about forgiveness, that if you are on, how important forgiveness is, that if you're on your way to give a gift at the altar and you recognize while you're on your way that you have a grudge against somebody, don't even go to the altar. Just put your gift down, go back to your brother or your sister, sort it out, let go of that grudge, and then come. And this, of course, is not that God is going to be withholding and say, you can't come to me because you're mad at somebody, I'm not letting you come. God is not withholding, right? We are withholding. God is not withholding. It's that if we're still holding that, then we are, once again, our focus is on the very world, this human material world. And we need to release that and get back to being the truth of who we are. And then we can approach God. That's what it takes. Holding on to stuff, or holding on to ideas, error thinking, holding on to extra weight, holding on to relationships that aren't really working, holding on to habits that don't serve us well, or definitely holding on to stuff. What does it represent? I really think it's like the denials, like Emily Cady's denials, that we can let go. The insecurity that has us clinging to our stuff is error thinking. It is a demonstration of doubt, of holding ourselves back, of not seeing ourselves as worthy. When we know it's an abundant universe, we know that God provides for all our needs. The Christ is our abundance. The Christ is our supply. In Cady's words, denials are how we get rid of troublesome conditions which are the result of erroneous thinking and feeling. And I know we all want to do that. Is that my phone? Honey, can you turn off my phone? This is my roadie. Thank you, sweetie. So when we're accumulating stuff, we're clutching out of insecurity or maybe out of habit. And it's not a receptive posture. The grasp that tries to solve a perceived lack just makes it impossible for us to receive something new. That Abby Lincoln song, it continues. There's a hand outstretched and open, gifts of life and love it brings. So keep your hand wide open if you're needing anything. That's the receptive posture. So you know what? About a month ago, right after Christmas, I gave myself a nice gift. The gift of a little more order. I went into my closets, I went into Dorothy's closets, our drawers, and I pulled out a lot of things that we just didn't need anymore. Also, art supplies and cabinets and bookcases, and I'm not done, but it felt really good. And I know you know what that's like. It's a really good feeling. And when we follow Emily Cady's teachings on denials, we are clearing out error thinking and making space. Making space. And it might be space for new stuff, or it might be just space for space. But that is making space for thoughts and feelings based in spiritual truth. Cady says, denial is the first practical step toward wiping out of our minds the mistakes of a lifetime. And in terms of stuff, the better I clear out the junk, the closer I get to being with what is truly precious. And then that's what gets my attention over the course of every day. The better we clear out error thinking, the more we are in touch with spiritual truth. And I couldn't and I wouldn't talk with you about Emily Cady's denials without also talking about the affirmations, because they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So once we have wiped out what needs to be wiped out through our denials, then we bring in what we want to affirm in our affirmations. And she calls them the 4 comprehensive affirmations. And why don't we go ahead and say them together, because they were in your bulletin. And we might as well say them together. Lafayette always said it's good to give that voice to it, right? It's good to give that voice. All right, together, number 1. God is life, love, intelligence, substance, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. Number 2. I am a child of manifestation of God, and every moment is life, love, wisdom, power flow into and through me. I am one with God and governed by His law. Number 3. I am spirit, perfect, holy, harmonious. Nothing can hurt me or make me sick or afraid, for spirit is God, and God cannot be sick or hurt or afraid. And then number 4, now I slightly amend the language on all of these, but here I only did it on that 4th one. And I just wanted to mention that if it works for you to use them exactly as she wrote them, then do it that way. But if there's any way that tweaking the language makes them feel a little more natural and therefore compelling for you, then I think that that's not a bad idea. I mean, her language is so clear and nice and easy, but it is, of course, a little bit old-fashioned at this point. So I really like to replace the word spirit for the word God, much of the time anyway. I also like to take out the masculine pronoun, and so anyway, what you have there for number 4 is my language, but it's not changed that much. But let's say that together now, please. Number 4. Spirit works in me to will and to do whatever is mine to do, and spirit cannot fail. Because just, you know, for me, the way it's originally written, it gets a grade of an A. But then when I make it in the language that really fits for me, then it's like A++, and then I love it even more. So I totally think that you should use these affirmations however they work best for you. I love Emily Cady. You'd never argue with anybody for wanting to stick with her own original language. My beloveds, you are so precious. And you deserve to be surrounded by, and you deserve to have your attention always called to what is most precious to you. And also, dear ones, we have been gifted with an abundant universe. And we deserve to always know that and remember that and behave accordingly. Because there's peace and ease that comes with that. So I think we can take some of this into meditation, and we have a song to take us there. Let's enter this moment with another of Katie's teachings, her words. The secret place of the Most High, where each one of us may dwell and be safe from all harm or fear of evil, is the point of mystical union between man and spirit, wherein we no longer believe but know that God in Christ abides always at the center of our being as our perfect health, deliverance, prosperity, power, ready to come forth into manifestation at any moment we claim it. We know it. We know it. We feel our oneness with Spirit, our source, and we manifest this oneness. Each of us here, a precious child of God, secure in our place on God's top 10 list, completely loved, our supply. That Spirit in us is our protection. We are the abundance of the universe. I am the abundance of the universe. Together, I am the abundance of the universe. Again, I am the abundance of the universe. Once more. I am the abundance of the universe. And so it is. In all my life is loving you. Grace in all my life is loving you. I want to love